Teairra Mari never let time soften what she believes was a deliberate betrayal. In her eyes, the music industry didn't just mishandle her rise, it crushed it. And she's been clear about who she thinks stood in the way. According to Teairra, fear of her potential turned powerful figures against her, and she has openly pointed to Beyonce and Rihanna as symbols of an industry that refused to let her thrive. Once celebrated as Rockefeller's brightest new star, she ended up broke, sidelined, and unfairly blamed for a collapse she insists was engineered, not earned. One moment, she was being positioned as the next breakout phenomenon. The next, she was drowning in lawsuits, smeared by negative headlines, dragged into public feuds, including one with 50 Cent, and discarded as if she'd suddenly become a liability. Teairra says none of it was random. She claims the system was already working against her. Much like later allegations made by Nicki Minaj, Teairra believes Roc Nation played a calculated game, profiting from her debut album, then placing her in direct competition with Beyonce and Rihanna, fully aware she would never be allowed to succeed. From her perspective, the outcome was decided before the race even began. That raises a troubling question: was Teairra Mari quietly sacrificed to protect bigger, more established stars? To understand why this theory gained traction, you have to look at how promising her beginning truly was. Her journey started with Big Mike of Kiss Productions, who believed in her talent early and passed her demo from one industry executive to another. Eventually, it reached L.A. Reid. One listen was all it took. Reid immediately recognized her star power and signed her to Rockefeller/Def Jam shortly after she turned 16. Her appeal went beyond vocal ability. She was young, striking, and embodied a polished urban image that Reid and Jay-Z believed could dominate the black market first and later cross over into mainstream audiences. Everything about her launch was strategic. Her image, sound, and positioning were carefully mapped out. By the time her debut single, Make Her Feel Good, dropped in 2005, the response was explosive. The numbers were undeniable. Still, she was just a teenager, and her age sparked conversation. Some questioned whether audiences would truly embrace a song with such a mature tone coming from someone so young. But despite the chatter, the buzz was real, and for a moment, it looked like Teairra Mari was unstoppable. Once Make Her Feel Good exploded and listeners everywhere started asking, "Who is Teairra Mari?" Jay-Z knew they had uncovered something special. The label leaned all the way in. Teairra was crowned the Princess of Roc Nation, and suddenly her face was everywhere: award shows, red carpets, interviews. Everything looked perfectly aligned for a major breakthrough. But just as the machine was supposed to push her forward, the energy abruptly died. It wasn't because Teairra lost hunger or drive. Behind the scenes, the label was unraveling. Rockefeller was deep in internal conflict, battling both creative disagreements and financial strain. Executives couldn't agree on which artists to prioritize or how to shape their careers. At the same time, Jay-Z was pushing for greater authority and control. Eventually, the tension reached a breaking point, ending with Jay-Z stepping in as president and effectively taking the reins. What Teairra didn't realize then was that this shift would quietly derail her future. Because once Jay-Z was in charge, another powerful voice entered the picture: Beyonce's. At the time, Beyonce wasn't just his girlfriend, she was becoming a dominant force in music. Fresh off Dangerously in Love, she was evolving from Destiny's Child frontwoman into a solo powerhouse. Her opinion, especially in R&B, carried serious weight. According to the story, Beyonce attended a performance one night and watched closely. When it was over, she reportedly approached L.A. Reid and casually remarked that Rihanna was a beast. She didn't campaign or make a scene, but that brief endorsement was enough. From that moment on, Rihanna was pushed to the front of the line. Rihanna responded by publicly praising Beyonce, calling her the blueprint every artist should follow. With Jay-Z backing her as well, the momentum became unstoppable. But this sudden shift raised eyebrows. Before the label shakeup, all eyes had been on Teairra Mari. Rihanna hadn't been the priority, until suddenly, she was. Despite being tied to the same label, Beyonce and Rihanna were never close. Their relationship has always felt distant, almost competitive. They've never collaborated musically, which only fueled speculation. So why did Beyonce step in at that moment? Was it loyalty to Jay-Z? Genuine belief in Rihanna's talent? Or something else entirely? Teairra Mari believes the move was strategic. In her view, elevating Rihanna was a subtle way to sideline her without making it obvious. Industry whispers suggested Beyonce saw Teairra as a real threat, someone whose sound, look, and stage presence overlapped too closely with her own brand. After Teairra's debut single dropped, comparisons to Beyonce were everywhere. Critics and fans alike noticed the similarities in performance style and musical direction. When Teairra's album was released, even major publications joined in. One review pointed out that Def Jam seemed to be pushing multiple young artists who appeared to be drawing heavily from Beyoncé's formula. The label leaned into it further by assigning Teairra vocal parts associated with Beyoncé and Destiny's Child, while Rihanna was given roles previously linked to Kelly Rowland. The narrative was clear: Teairra was being framed as the next big star. From Teairra's perspective, that was exactly the problem. Beyoncé, still early in her solo journey, reportedly wasn't interested in sharing the spotlight. Rather than allowing the competition to grow, Teairra believes it was cut down before it could become inconvenient. And with Jay-Z by Beyoncé's side, it didn't take much effort, just a few well-placed words. At the time, many people dismissed Rihanna as a fleeting success, a one-hit wonder who wouldn't last. Fast forward to now, and the irony is sharp. Rihanna's name is regularly mentioned alongside Beyoncé's, with some even arguing she surpassed her in influence and success. For Teairra Mari, that twist in the story isn't just shocking, it's painfully poetic. In the end, after all the quiet maneuvering and behind-the-scenes power plays, Teairra Mari was the one left paying the highest price, and the way it unfolded makes it sting even more. She wasn't cut loose after a scandal, a headline-grabbing mistake, or some explosive fallout. There was no dramatic confrontation, no warning, no chance to prepare herself. She was just a teenager, in the middle of getting ready for prom, a moment meant to symbolize beginnings, dreams, and possibility, when her entire future shifted without notice. One day, she was a rising star signed to one of the most influential labels in music, being told she was next, being celebrated as the future. The next day, she was gone. Quietly removed. No meeting. No phone call. No explanation. What hurt most was who stayed silent. Jay-Z, the same person who had spoken to her with warmth, guidance, and what felt like genuine concern, didn't reach out at all. No reassurance. No closure. No acknowledgement. Just absence. And that absence spoke volumes. It made clear that whatever bond she thought existed was conditional, and once she no longer served a purpose, she was no longer worth the courtesy of a goodbye. That moment changed her permanently. It was the first time Teairra truly grasped how transactional the industry could be. She learned that smiles, promises, and encouragement often come with expiration dates. People will uplift you enthusiastically as long as you're profitable, as long as you're convenient, as long as you fit into their plans. But the second you become replaceable, you're discarded without hesitation. For anyone, that realization would be painful. For a young girl who had been lifted up so quickly and so publicly, it was shattering. Still, she swallowed the pain. She did what she'd been taught: stay quiet, stay professional, don't show hurt, don't let bitterness show. Trying to rebuild, she signed a deal with Warner Brothers and convinced herself this was just a detour, not the end of the road. On the surface, it looked promising: a new label, a clean slate, another chance. But momentum in the music industry is fragile. Once it's interrupted, reclaiming it is almost impossible. The machine moves fast, and when you slip out of focus, even briefly, people stop paying attention. Teairra felt the difference immediately. The excitement wasn't there. The warmth had cooled. The conversations felt guarded. She hadn't lost her talent or her appeal, but something invisible had shifted, and everyone sensed it. Even so, she continued to deliver. Songs like Sponsor had all the makings of a hit: catchy, confident, perfectly aligned with the sound of that era. Under normal circumstances, it should have been everywhere. Instead, doors started closing. Major platforms began rejecting her. BET's 106 & Park, once a crucial gateway for artists, refused to play the record. Even more shocking, BET outright banned her video, claiming it sent harmful messages to young women. That explanation rang hollow. This was the same network that had long promoted hypersexualized imagery, toxic relationship narratives, and blatant objectification without blinking. Yet suddenly, Teairra Mari was where they drew the moral line? The contradiction was impossible to ignore. To many, it felt less like concern and more like a convenient justification to quietly remove her from the spotlight. The double standard was obvious, and the industry's refusal to address it only made it louder. All of this unfolded while another artist's rise seemed unstoppable. Rihanna was rapidly becoming a global force, crossing genres, markets, and audiences with ease. The overlap in timing was impossible to miss. In an industry that publicly insists there's room for everyone but privately operates as if there can only be one, it wasn't unreasonable to suspect deliberate choices were being made behind closed doors. When labels decide who they're going to fully back, they also decide who they're willing to let go. And despite her talent and promise, Teairra Mari appeared to be the one they chose to sacrifice. Watching her music stall despite having all the right ingredients slowly wore her down in ways that went far beyond numbers or chart placements. It wasn't just disappointing, it was demoralizing. Every step forward seemed met with resistance, as if unseen forces were quietly sealing doors before she could even knock. Sponsor wasn't lacking quality or confidence, it lacked backing. And in an industry where momentum is manufactured, talent without support often goes nowhere. As opportunities dried up and the spotlight dimmed, Teairra reached a crossroads many artists eventually face. If the music world was no longer willing to invest in her, she needed another way to stay visible. That's where reality television came in. Love and hip-hop wasn't a vanity move, it was survival. It was about staying in the public eye in a culture that forgets people the moment they fall out of rotation. Reality TV offered exposure, even if it came with strings attached. Those strings, however, were heavy. Instead of being judged on her artistry, she was now scrutinized as a character. Her struggles became plotlines. Her pain was edited, packaged, and consumed for entertainment. Every mistake was amplified, every emotional breakdown dissected by viewers who had no idea how much she had already lost. The cruelty of it all was hard to ignore. The same industry that quietly shut her out now tuned in to watch her struggle in public. Through it all, the sense of betrayal never really faded. Being dropped without a phone call. Promises that dissolved overnight. Doors closing without explanation. Those experiences reshaped her. They stripped away any illusions she had about loyalty or mentorship and replaced them with a hard-earned understanding of contracts, power dynamics, and how easily people are replaced once they stop being useful. She entered the industry believing in guidance and goodwill. She left knowing how cold the game could be. What makes Teairra's story so heavy is that it isn't rare. It's painfully common. She represents countless young artists who are discovered early, celebrated loudly, and discarded quietly. The ones labeled special until someone more convenient comes along. The ones blamed for failing to bounce back after the system itself pulled the rug out from under them. Her journey exposes how brutal the industry can be, especially to young women without the power or protection to defend themselves. Even now, when people reflect on her career, there's an unmistakable sense of loss, of unrealized potential. Not because she lacked skill or ambition, but because timing, politics, and decisions made behind closed doors dictated her path. Teairra Mari didn't fail the industry. The industry failed her. And the most heartbreaking part is how young she was when she learned that lesson, at an age when she should have been dreaming about the future, not grieving it. In many ways, the shift to reality TV functioned like a quiet career implosion. Not a loud crash, not a headline-grabbing scandal, just a slow erasure. Calls stopped coming. Doors stopped opening. Her name gradually faded from rooms she was once expected to dominate. It did nothing to help her image and arguably left her worse off than before. Instead of being seen as a gifted young artist with promise and individuality, she became a warning story. Her music career veered so far off course that she never truly got the chance to reach her full potential, and that's the part that hurts most in hindsight. She wasn't untalented. She wasn't lazy. She wasn't forgettable. She simply existed in an industry that punishes women who don't move exactly how they're expected to move. Today, conversations online reflect that growing awareness. Many people now recognize how unfairly she was sidelined, especially given how young she was when everything began to unravel. She was essentially a teenager navigating an industry filled with power plays, egos, alliances, and silent rules no one ever spells out. You're just supposed to know. And if you don't smile correctly, praise the right people loudly enough, or play your role flawlessly, you're quietly pushed aside. Looking back at Teairra's early career is almost painful now. You can see the potential so clearly. The lane she could have claimed. The sound she could have refined. What she needed wasn't more talent, it was time, support, and protection. Instead, she got politics, pressure, and a lesson about the industry that came far too soon. Then there's the whole situation with 50 Cent, a chapter people often reduce to jokes or memes, but one that carried serious, lasting damage. It gets brushed off as, she owed him $30,000, like that amount is insignificant in an industry where artists are already underpaid, overworked, and financially trapped. But that moment wasn't really about the money. It was about power. It was a clear example of how easily a powerful man can publicly embarrass a woman in the industry, drag her name through the mud, and crush whatever momentum she has left, especially when she no longer has powerful allies shielding her. He made it public, prolonged it online, and turned it into spectacle. And once the internet decides you're a punchline, rebuilding your credibility becomes nearly impossible. People still talk about how unfairly Teairra was treated, but those conversations rarely go beyond surface-level sympathy. Everyone agrees it was wrong, yet few want to interrogate why this pattern keeps repeating, particularly for young black women in music. They're hyped early, sexualized fast, constantly compared, and then discarded the moment they don't meet impossible standards or start feeling threatening. Teairra was that girl, the one everyone said was next. I remember being genuinely confused when she disappeared. It wasn't gradual. She just vanished. One minute she was everywhere, and the next, her name only resurfaced in the context of jokes or controversy. It didn't fully click for me until she appeared on Love and Hip Hop. And that realization hit hard. Not because reality TV is inherently bad, but because it often becomes the final option when the music industry quietly shuts its doors. Seeing her there felt unsettling. Someone once destined for major stages was now fighting to stay relevant in a space built on chaos and spectacle. Even then, it didn't feel like support, it felt like exploitation. Her struggles were repackaged as entertainment, her pain reduced to plot points. It's hard not to feel like Teairra simply refused to play the industry's game. And by the game, I mean the unspoken expectations, kissing rings, faking alliances, shrinking yourself to fit whatever image is currently profitable. There's a certain obedience the industry expects from women, especially young women. When you don't perform that submission, you get labeled difficult, ungrateful, or disposable. Independence is only praised when it's convenient. Once it becomes inconvenient, it's punished. That leads into a conversation people get uncomfortable having, the one involving Beyonce. And before anyone gets defensive, let's be clear, Beyonce is extraordinarily talented, disciplined, and deserving of her success. That's not up for debate. But admiration doesn't mean blind loyalty. It's okay to question moments that feel off. Maybe Teairra didn't fawn over her. Maybe she didn't bow, gush, or present herself as a fan instead of an equal. In an industry obsessed with hierarchy, that alone can be enough to make someone a problem. I love Rihanna, her music, her business acumen, the lane she carved for herself. She understands her strengths and leans into them unapologetically. But let's be honest, her power was never about outsinging everyone. And she never pretended otherwise. Beyonce, on the other hand, is often placed on an untouchable pedestal, vocally superior, beyond comparison. That kind of positioning can create a hostile environment when new artists with real talent emerge. So when people say, Beyonce was wrong for that, they're not saying she's a villain. They're saying the situation felt strange. The energy didn't sit right. The outcome was too lopsided to ignore. Teairra arrived early with a sound and presence that felt natural, not manufactured. She wasn't a copy of anyone else. She had her own identity. And sometimes, that alone is enough to unsettle people in an industry that only wants room for one woman at the top. So what do you think? Was Teairra Mari genuinely a threat, someone who could have disrupted the usual order if she'd been allowed to grow? Or was she just unlucky, caught in the crossfire of politics, egos, and bad timing? Personally, I think it was all of the above. She had the talent, but talent is never enough on its own. You need protection. Strategy. People who actually want you to win, not just profit from you while you're useful. The most heartbreaking part is imagining what we never got. The music she could have made. The confidence she might have grown into if she hadn't been constantly undermined. Instead of being celebrated for her individuality, she was slowly pushed to the edges, her story rewritten by people who benefited from her silence. And once the industry decides you're finished, reclaiming your narrative is an uphill battle. Teairra's story isn't just hers. It's a reflection of how many women before and after her have been treated the same way, different faces,